Really a lot of extra content in the second one, but a little bit. And it's basically on the theme. They're called concentration, which is a terrible translation of the word samadhi, I presume. But really it means stillness. And it's actually about 4 different types of people. Some who gain what is in the text described as serenity of mind, and some the higher wisdom of insight. And everybody is doing one or the other and eventually both. So it's not a samatha or vipassana. It's not a which one's more important. Can I get enlightened without vipassana? Can I get enlightened without the jhanas? It's not about that. It's more about our propensities and our leanings, in a sense, and then how to develop what we're actually less sufficient in. So how to balance them and make both come to fulfillment is how I understand this. So yeah, still reading a few introductions. I won't read them out now because we're actually recording already, but it's lovely to hear from you all. And I'm reading you and hearing you and empathizing with you also. So may this session give you some uplift and some peace, and hopefully also some instruction. So as usual, it's a discussion. It's not a sort of class as such, so I invite everybody on the Zoom to engage. If you don't want your voice to be recorded, then you may write in the chat and get my voice recorded. Or if you want to contribute another voice, please do. It's lovely to hear from you personally, and your video will not be recorded, only mine will. So this is from the Anguttara Nikaya number 4. So the Book of the Fours, and it's Sutta number 93 and hopefully 94 if we get onto it. So Anguttara 4, 93 and 94. And as I said, it's called, the translation is concentration, but I would say it's called stillness or serenity. So shall we plunge straight in? Ready? Steady? Okay. So I'll change the word bhikkhu to community so that it includes everybody here. Community, there are these 4 kinds of persons found existing in the world. What for? Number 1, here, some person gains internal serenity of mind, that's samatha, but not the higher wisdom of insight into phenomena. Number 2, some other person gains the higher wisdom of insight into phenomena, but not internal serenity of mind. Number 3, still another gains neither internal serenity of mind nor the higher wisdom of insight into phenomena. Is that most of us? Oh, we've all got a bit of both, I hope. And number 4, still another gains both the internal serenity of mind and the higher wisdom of insight into phenomena. So what do we do about this? Monastics or community. Number 1, the person among these who gains internal serenity of mind but not the higher wisdom of insight into phenomena should base themselves on the internal serenity of mind and make an effort to gain the higher wisdom of insight into phenomena. Then, sometime later, one gains both internal serenity of mind and the higher wisdom of insight into phenomena. Number 2, the person who gains the higher wisdom of insight into phenomena but not internal serenity of mind should base themselves on the higher wisdom of insight into phenomena and make an effort to gain internal serenity of mind. Then, sometime later, one gains both the higher wisdom of insight into phenomena and internal serenity of mind. Number 3, the person who gains neither internal serenity of mind nor the higher wisdom of insight into phenomena should put forth extraordinary desire, effort, zeal, enthusiasm, indefatigability, mindfulness, and clear comprehension to obtain both these wholesome qualities. Just as one whose clothes or head had caught fire would put forth extraordinary desire, effort, zeal, enthusiasm, indefatigability, mindfulness, and clear comprehension to extinguish the fire on their clothes or head, so that person should put forth extraordinary desire, effort, zeal, enthusiasm, indefatigability, I've said that 3 times now, mindfulness and clear comprehension to obtain both those wholesome qualities. Then, sometime later, they gain both internal serenity of mind and the higher wisdom of insight into phenomena. Number 4, the person who gains both internal serenity of mind and the higher wisdom of insight into phenomena should base themselves on those same wholesome qualities and make a further effort to reach the destruction of the taints. That's the asaras, which basically means make an effort to, I don't like the word become, but yeah, basically abandon greed, hatred, and delusion for good and be an arahat, so fully enlightened. So we're on for full enlightenment there. These bhikkhus, or monastics, or community, are the 4 kinds of persons found existing in the world. So this is the first sutta, and the second one will give a little bit more explanation about how we go about this. But first of all, I want to just come to a couple of footnotes which talk about the 2. And so for internal serenity, the instruction or the commentary says that the mind should be steadied, composed, unified, and stilled by way of the first jhana, and so too for the second and the higher jhanas, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, that means. Why not the 8? Does anyone know? Because there are only 4, and the last 4 are the arupa states. And for the insight, conditioned phenomena should be seen as impermanent, explored as impermanent, and discerned with insight as impermanent. So too as suffering and as non-self. So conditioned phenomena means anything that has arisen at all that we can be aware of. And the Buddha usually points to particular areas that are very productive to investigate. And they are usually around the 5 khandas, what we take to be compromising or making up this so-called self. So they are the 5 khandas, the body, the feelings, perception, will or volition, the karma formations of the mind, and consciousness. Or we can explore the 6 senses, which are another way of describing the being, the whole of a being. We're nothing more than this. So that's sight, sound, smell, taste, touch consciousness, body consciousness if you like, and mind consciousness should be explored, seen, discerned with insight as impermanent, as suffering, and as non-self. So, having read this little sutta, it'd be good to have some discussion, but I think first of all I'd like to just say a few words about samatha and vipassana, and to point out that there's a little bit of a misunderstanding in the Buddhist world that has started to group these 2 qualities of mind and see them purely in terms of meditation methods. So people say, I'm practicing samatha or I'm practicing vipassana. You don't actually practice samatha or vipassana. You practice meditation. We practice bhavana, meditation, and the results are samatha and vipassana. So we practice the Eightfold Noble Path. We practice cultivating the mind in the way the Buddha described, and we can use various methods for that. But the 2 qualities of samatha and vipassana are always working together, developing together in harmony. Perhaps one is stronger for you than another, but they're both being developed by almost every meditation method. And if not, then something may be slightly askew. And of course, we have different propensities, as I was saying. You know, some people's minds tend to get engaged more with a method that is more geared towards insights arising. Do you see the difference than me saying Vipassana meditation. There's a method. The method itself is not Vipassana, but the outcome of a particular method might be insight. So, for example, viewing things in terms of impermanence, suffering, and non-self is likely to produce insights into those three things. But it may not. It may actually lead to samatha. It may lead to calm and serenity. So we can't really say the method itself is samatha or vipassana. And the wisdom too, the more that wisdom develops and the more we're able to let go of greed, hate, and delusion through our insights into suffering, non-self, and impermanence, the calmer the mind will become. But some particular methods tend to lead more in the direction of calm. So we can choose the methods that we wish to develop based on our interest or also based on our strengths. And it's interesting to me here that the Buddha seems to be saying if a person does gain higher wisdom of insight into phenomena, what does he say? They should base themselves on that and then make an effort to gain internal serenity of mind. So in other words, use your strength, base yourself on that, use that as a kind of platform in a sense, a way of establishing mindfulness, clear comprehension, etc., etc. And from there, make an effort to develop the weaker aspect of the practice. Does this make sense? So whether we do one first and then another, or we cultivate in a way that develops both in roughly equal proportions is kind of up to us. And sometimes it's just to do with which teachers and which teachings we come across. Sometimes it might be just that you started in a particular direction, and so therefore your mind easily gets still or easily kind of gets connected to the realities of impermanence. And for me personally, in my practice, I started with mostly a method geared towards insight. There was a little bit of breath meditation, but even in the breath meditation, the way we observe the breath actually led to more insight than calm, because we were to observe the breath in its kind of basic nature, its characteristic, again, of like the feelings of the breath, and then noticing the impermanence in those feelings. So that too led to more insight than jhana, let's say, than kind of one-pointed stillness. But there was still stillness developing alongside that. But at some point I realized that, the insight was quite sharp, and the part that needed further development was actually a place to rest, a place to actually abide for a longer time. And some people kind of think of these kind of states of peace as some kind of ground of being or some kind of permanent state. But actually, the way the Buddha taught it is that they are very still. The mind is very one-pointed at that time. So it seems as though this is the ultimate reality, but in fact those states too are conditioned and do disappear. They do dissipate when the causes that gave rise to them disappear. So they're still impermanent states. So even with methods that lead towards calm and one-pointedness, still a lot of insight can be developed through reflecting wisely on these things. So with that said, there's several comments. I'm not sure if there are some questions in there already. But if there are, then I shall come to you. And please do raise your hands at this point, because there may be some questions around samatha and vipassana and methods, or how we know what to do when, whatever it is. So I think the question here is about the actual sutta. So thanks, Benjamin, for answering that. And I'm coming to Shirley, who I think has intentionally raised her hand, perhaps. Otherwise, you get a bonus question.
No, I went into chat again to look at the questions, and my hand went.
Okay.
The question that was sort of in my mind was, we've all had some insights into impermanence, non-self, and suffering. Certainly we've all probably had some insight into suffering, else we wouldn't be here The very fact that we're
Right,
here, we've
right.
contemplated it and had some insight. So is he talking about that sort of insight in this sutta, or is he talking about profound insights that need
Yeah.
stream entry?
Well, I think the good news here is that that he is talking about people who have gained some but are not yet enlightened, because the last verse shows that, even the person who has the higher wisdom and serenity still has to make an effort, still has to make further effort. And I would say that even when someone has gained neither, still it's saying we should put forward extraordinary zeal, effort, enthusiasm, mindfulness, and clear comprehension to attain them. So even for that person, it seems to me that, they're already kind of on the path. They're already practicing, let's say, and they just need to kind of up their endeavor. So it's difficult to say, but based on my understanding of the Buddhist teaching, I would probably guess that these insights don't necessarily relate to a stream winner yet, simply because one of the cases is someone who's gained the higher wisdom but not internal serenity of mind. And my understanding of the Eightfold Path is that you do need a degree, fairly deep degree of internal serenity of mind in order to gain higher wisdom that will liberate, that will take you to stream winning. So, of course, there's some debate about this in Buddhist circles, and some people say, well, you don't need jhana necessarily for the first stage of awakening. But I think in my experience and through the people I've met who have realized stream winning and above, or who have great faith in having done so, because we can never absolutely know. It's not that anyone is going to, well, sometimes a monastic can tell a monastic, but they do so very carefully. And only if it's a very close disciple. So, I have my faith and I have some idea of who may have experienced this. And in every case, they had developed samatha to quite a depth, quite some depth. So I would probably hedge a guess that this relates to everybody who's practicing. So all of us here. And it's great if you, like you say, most people here probably have some insight into suffering. At least we have some suffering. That's why we're here. And the insight may be at the point of, understanding that there is a way out and
Yeah,
trying to practice.
I just wanted to say, I think my other reflection was that lately my meditation's been sort of rubbish, and I've sort of looked at I've sort of thought, well, here I've just got to look at the hindrances as impermanent and not mine, and actually as suffering. And so I suppose that's using insight to actually calm the mind. I mean, one can actually do that, I feel, with
Yeah.
difficult states of mind when it's when it just doesn't want to settle. You can actually look at that with the three characteristics, and then I suppose you get some sort of degree of not deep calm, but at least some sort of I don't know, some sort of equanimity about the or
Yeah.
distance, not sort of thinking you're at a complete failure and wreck. You just sort of think, oh well, that's just how the mind is right now, and it'll change. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. Just by the way, just to remind you, which your meditation is not yours. Okay. There's no such thing as my meditation. There's just these two qualities supported by virtue that are developing gradually according to causes and conditions. That's all. And this is our experiment, isn't it? To notice when a little bit more serenity might be needed, or a little bit more reflection on impermanence, or maybe some metta practice. That's also a way to calm and to gain insight. So there are so many different methods, so many different perceptions we can use. And, we're trying to understand the mind. We're trying to work with the mind. We're not trying to kind of beat it into submission. Come on, mind, get still. Come on, mind, get rid of these hindrances. We're trying to understand, okay, what is the cause for the hindrance arising? How does it make me feel? Is it leading to suffering, or is it leading to the end of suffering? Is there a different perception I can use here to soften this hindrance and create a sense of release? So your practice is no different from anyone else's practice in that regard. And yet, we all have to kind of work with the mind we have. So, yeah, it's a dance, isn't it, between the two? And I think the deeper the stillness, the more easy it is to spot the hindrances. And then, yeah, we can use perception skillfully, because it is just perception until we actually have a breakthrough, to enable us to dig that bit deeper. Yeah, I'm coming to Kylie, I think it is, and then to the chat.
Yeah, so what can you say about Anapanasati Sutta as a method, perhaps? I just find that it, the formula takes through a journey of stilling, both
Yeah,
stilling and insight.
absolutely.
So it's sometimes I find myself like wondering within that formula or within that practice, like, okay, should I be actively trying to calm bodily formations, or is the calming of bodily formations just something that happens
Yeah,
naturally, and I'm
yeah,
meant to be aware of that and have an insight
yeah,
of that happening?
yes,
It's just a
yeah, yeah,
kind of exploration in that
sure.
one method. I think I can get so much of this.
Yes, thank you for mentioning that. Actually, the Anapanasati Sutta is a fantastic example of how samatha and vipassana work together. And the insight that arises in the Anapanasati Sutta is the direct consequence of stilling the mind, and to the point of jhana. So the first tetrad is about simply establishing mindfulness and then knowing whether the breath is coming in or going out. So we don't try to know, we just know. We just develop an awareness, mindfully breathing in, mindfully breathing out. The breathing is happening anyway, but our job is just to establish mindfulness in the beginning or as a priority. This parimukkham doesn't mean in front of, but it means as a priority. So there's already a degree of mindfulness, and then we just become aware of the breath. It's enough just to know the breath coming in, the breath going out. And then the next is to know whether it's long or short. So we're not trying to make it long or short. We're simply looking at the breath in a way that kind of generates an interest in the breath and helps us to sustain our awareness on that breath. Yeah. But a lot of this is, see, the Anapanasati Sutta is actually quite a refined practice. And if we just take a single sutta, we can think that, oh, it's something I have to do. Whereas actually the sutta is more descriptive, a description of what happens when the causes are in place. So as part of the gradual training, which is the Buddha's most common teaching in the suttas, the Anapana practice comes after establishing virtue, establishing sense restraint, establishing or practicing in daily life mindfulness and clear comprehension in the various postures and also while going about one's daily tasks. And already having a degree of happiness and contentment and simplicity in one's life, coming from that virtue and that sense restraint, and a very ethical way of life. So by the time we sit down with the breath, the mind is relatively clear, relatively free from hindrances, not completely free, but relatively free. And so we don't need to use a lot of force or effort to be aware of the breath. And so by the end of that first tetrad, like the breath is long or it's short, then it's one is aware, like one, it does say something like, the breath, it doesn't exactly say one pacifies the breath, but the next stage is the calming of the breath. And it's the same at the end of every tetrad. The experience basically calms down, and that happens naturally. It happens naturally because the mind is satisfied with the breath. It's satisfied with the meditation object, and it's simplifying step by step. So as we become more absorbed in the breath, that we don't need so much air anymore. We don't need so much energy, right? The mind can relax, the thoughts relax, and the breath naturally becomes calmer and quieter and more peaceful. And that's when it goes into the second tetrad, which is all about the joy that arises. So in the second tetrad, we're already practicing mindfulness of feelings, which is part of the second tetrad of the Satipatthana, second Satipatthana, Vedananupassana. And it's interesting that in the Anapanasati Sutta, I mean, this is a whole talk on its own, so I can't go into too much more detail, but just to say that the happiness that arises with the breath. It's a peaceful kind of nourishing, you can call it bliss, but sometimes it's a very quiet, contented kind of bliss. That, again, is enough to sustain your awareness naturally on the breath, because you're being so satisfied through the practice that you don't need, the mind doesn't need to wander. And after a while, when we become kind of satiated and filled up with that happiness, that joy, the mind actually starts to incline to even more peaceful states. It starts to find even the joy slightly agitating naturally when we've had our fill. And so then there's a calming down of even that joy and that happiness. And that's when we start to experience the joy and happiness in the mental field. So the joy and the happiness, which was still perhaps related to the physical body, becomes increasingly refined, increasingly mental, and then it becomes like a light, something like this. And this is what the Buddha means in the third tetrad by Chitta Sankara. It means like the mind interprets the breath as something like a light, or maybe something with soft texture or something like this, which we call a nimitta. Yeah. So the third tetrad is kind of it's an example of the third satipatthana, which is mindfulness of the chitta. And then that calms down. And I think at the end of that, it's vimochayam chittam, which means the mind is released, is liberated. And that is where the jhana starts. So that's the jhana at the end of the third tetrad, as far as I remember. And then based on that experience of deep insight and the abandoning of the 5 hindrances, and according to people who teach jhana properly, I would say, and who've experienced these things at a depth, you have also abandoned the 5 senses at that time. You've moved from the body through feeling, through mind. You enter the jhana, which is a state of complete unification. And as a result of that, you're able to you've got something real to base your insight on. So then you can contemplate impermanence. And what is it? Fading away. Is it Nibbida Viraga and then Patinissaga in the last one? So the fourth tetrad is basically the insights that arise. And again, it's not something we do, but it's something that arises naturally on the basis of our experience of, our practice of samatha, so long as we have a modicum of right view. So long as we've heard the Buddha's teachings and we kind of know where to look, in a sense. So this is why some other people in different traditions, like maybe mystic traditions, and it can happen to anyone, right? Self-practiced people that haven't heard the Buddha's teachings will interpret those jhana states as like union with God, the ground of being, the soul, cosmic consciousness, because it feels that way, and it's just the most incredibly powerful, blissful experience you've had in your life. But if you've had right view, then you know how to use the power of the mind after the jhana to look at experience, in other words, the 5 khandhas or the 6 senses, in terms of suffering, impermanence, and non-self. And then you're going to see things that you didn't want to see, you didn't expect to see, you were actually repelled from seeing, because for once the mind has no hindrances and it's unbiased. The Buddha said it's malleable, it's fit for work. So at that time you have an opportunity to see things in a completely new way, which shocks you and surprises you. So, well, I tried to do that in brief, but that's sort of how the Anapanasati Sutta, to me, describes the process. And of course, all along the way, there has to be some level of wisdom accompanying the practice, right? To know whether or not the hindrances are coming in, to know whether, maybe you need to brush up your sila in everyday life. All kinds of insights come along because we meet obstacles. And although it's a descriptive process of a path, it's never linear for any one of us unless you're like, I don't know, you've been practicing in many lives. It's not going to be a linear process. So, I hope that sort of gives something to make sense of that. And okay. I'll come to the chat first of all. So I hope that made sense. Did that make sense to people? Yeah? Okay. All right. How to practice stillness without the emphasis on impermanence, as done in Goenka's Vipassana tradition. Yeah, I guess to a degree, my comment to the last question maybe touched on that. I think without the emphasis on impermanence is important to practice stillness that's going to take you into jhana. And that's why I wouldn't say these are different methods that you can call samatha or vipassana, but the way we look at phenomena will determine whether they are likely to lead to calm or insight. So if we look at things through a lens of impermanence, it's likely to lead towards insight over stillness. Although the mind will get still, to a degree, it won't go into jhana. And that's basically because we're observing things that some people in the Abhidhamma as well likes to call it more like ultimate nature. But there is no kind of fixed ultimate nature, but still we're sort of dissecting, taking things apart. And when you see impermanence, you see something changing. So because it's changing, you can't really absorb into it. So the way to practice stillness without looking at impermanence is to see things more in a very simple way and more as concept. So you see the breath simply as breath. You don't sort of see its dissolution. You don't get too entangled in the physical feeling of it. It's just the knowing of it. So in the Anapanasati Sutta, it doesn't actually say it doesn't say kind of like analyze it, or it doesn't say feel it. It just says one knows one is breathing in or breathing out. That's all. It's that simple. You just know. And so because that knowing, the breath starts to calm down and the knowing becomes kind of, the object becomes more and more even and still and kind of samey. And so the kind of impermanence and the changeability of it starts to settle. And you're able to actually have something more consistent to focus on. And that's how it can lead to absorption. It actually has to disappear. The movement of the breath and the breath itself has to disappear. First of all, it sort of gets engulfed by the pleasantness, by the piti sukha, and then even the piti sukha, which can still have some changeability, gets engulfed by, say, a light in the mind. At first, the light in the mind will be like moving as well, but eventually that becomes very still, and then you can absorb because it's single. I hope that makes sense. Yeah, it's a different way of looking, in short. So I'm coming to Joseph.
Thank you.
Hi.
Kimball. Thank you. I just wanted to ask some clarifying questions.
Sure.
You mentioned that jhana is free from the five senses.
Uh-huh.
I was reading a sutta called the Thorn Sutta, and it says that for the first jhana, noise is a thorn,
Yeah, that's
and
true.
that for the fourth jhana, in and out breathing is a thorn. So I was trying to process that. It the way I understand thorns is that one can still hear sounds. It's possible to still hear sounds in the first jhana, otherwise it wouldn't be a thorn. That's why we look for quiet. It's harder to practice.
Right.
Just one, because, and also just as a clarifying question, when I hear that the first jhana is free from the five senses, that sounds like the formless attainments, like the infinite space. And
Yeah, no.
how is that different in terms
Okay.
of, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I can't speak from experience with the formless attainments, let's say, or the formless realms or something like this. But basically, the idea of noise being a thorn to the first jhana means getting into it in the first place. So it makes it very difficult, harder to get into. But actually, if anybody's meditated, even in a noisy place and got some degree of stillness, you'll find those sounds start to fade into the background. So unless they're very shocking and very sudden, it's unlikely to be too much of a problem once you reach a certain point of stillness, and that's before jhana. But it's also a thorn in the sense that it can actually bring you out. So the five senses have disappeared for the duration that you're in, but sound is still the easiest way to get you out. It's the thing that will disturb you and bring you out more quickly than anything else. So if you think about going to bed at night, You know, it's sounds that wake you up. It's not that your hearing is very active, but a sound can definitely intrude because you're not that deep. But by the second jhana, it's unlikely, it's much harder to get you out even through sound. And yeah, it's different from the formless realms because I think the reason that they don't call the first four formless, even though you go beyond the five senses in all four, is because the object you use is still within the world of form. So the breath is form, and yeah, the object that you use is usually in the formless, in the form, realm of form. So the formless states are extremely refined, and there's absolutely nothing that you could identify as form from the outset. So Ajahn Brahm likes to call them special cases of the fourth jhana. And you have to go in through the fourth jhana, it seems, for it to be a genuine formless attainment. However, there are all kinds of sort of experiences you can have long before even the first jhana or even nimitta stages, which can feel like formless attainments. You know, I mean, sometimes people can just go into a sort of dissociative state, right? But even if it's not a kind of dissociative state where we just can't feel our body, still we can have kind of, what would you call it? Like sort of, I don't know, strange experiences. And that's what Ajahn Brahm calls perception taking wings. You know, where our perception starts to change because our mind is free from usually the hindrances to a degree, and it can perceive in ways that it usually doesn't. And this is before jhanas, but unfortunately, because the Buddhist scene is full of people with interesting minds like all of us, and there's a great desire for attainment, unfortunately, that is the unfortunate thing. People are very quick to jump on things and say, this is the ultimate, or this is a jhana, or this must be a formless attainment. Even the other day, someone came to me and said they'd experienced something which I could immediately identify as kind of nimitta or pre-nimitta. And they were told by other people, they'd spoken to lots of other Dhamma teachers who told her maybe it was a formless state, which is impossible because she hasn't experienced first jhana yet. But we like to think that, don't we? And it can feel that way. But I think the message of the Buddha's teachings throughout the suttas, and the message I like to give, is just keep going, just keep digging deeper. Don't stop short, you know. You might feel that, oh, I've landed in this place and now I understand what it is and how to describe it, how to interpret it. And from there you begin your own little philosophy. And it's true to a degree, but it's still not the full insight. And you can know that if you still suffer. If you still suffer, then there's more to understand. The point of this path is not where we're at or what philosophy we land on or what, you know, how to make sense of the world. The point is to end suffering. So I think this sutta is really nice because it's kind of telling us that, okay, you have the wisdom, but keep developing the calm. Okay, you have calm, you need more wisdom. Okay, you have both, but keep going, you know, keep going until you're free from the taints. Don't stop short. All right. Experience is difficult to put into words, and even words are difficult. It would be cool to have a way to share experiences directly. I like this osmosis thing that Ajahn Brahm and Brahmali talk about. It's as if there's something along the lines of inhaling experience. And I think it's cool that it somehow works online here too. Yeah, it does. This osmosis thing, to me, it's a kind of empathy, isn't it? It's an emotional resonance, sympathetic resonance, empathic compassion. I'm going to be talking about empathy on Sunday, actually, and I think one thing that's often overlooked in empathy is that we can empathise and attune to the positive emotions too. So if you are somebody who easily resonates with others or gets very affected by others, make sure you're surrounded by people who are good to be around, whose qualities you want to imbibe and pick up and get inspired from. So yeah, I do think there's something very strong about osmosis, and that's why it's good. That's why the Buddha says, be around wise friends. It's one of the reasons. He says to instruct, to inspire, to gladden and encourage, of course, to hear the Dhamma, but also to inspire and to emulate. And we just do start emulating the people we're around, like it or not. So we're social creatures. We emulate. Even without meaning to. So yeah, it's that's why practitioners come together and why it can be very supportive. Okay, so would your advice be to focus on sila, sense restraint, and awareness in daily life to the point of establishing a base gladness before attempting to start to practice something like breath meditation? I'll keep reading. As in, as long as distraction, discontent, and bad habits are still present, is it too early to establish a meditation habit? It's a great question. I don't think it has to be before or after, but I think alongside. Alongside is very good. I mean, this question of before or after is a tricky one. Certainly, you need the sila alongside your meditation, which is why in the Goenka tradition, they develop these 10-day retreats. I remember Goenkaji saying in one of the discourses, you know, to put the cart before the horse or the horse before the cart, it's become very difficult. And so for that reason, we made these 10-day courses where you can't actually break your sila. So for that 10 days, you're protected. And at the same time, you start to develop your sense restraint very strongly. Your sila's packed, right? You don't even have to try. Or you can try, but I mean, it'll be hard. You'll be kicked out. And then you're also developing mindfulness alongside it. But I personally found breath meditation really difficult before I started to have that sort of happiness coming from inside. And a good relationship with my mind as well. And it also depends how it's taught. Like if you feel like the breath is something you've got to kind of grab or hold on to at any cost and kind of force into your awareness, it's not going to work. So yeah, I think a sense of gladness, a sense of like ethical integrity, happiness with your life, contentment with little, then you're going to see the beauty in the breath. You're not like trying to grab and go after something, and you know, you have enough confidence to know that if you just relax, the breath will calm. So we do need all the other aspects, but yeah, I wouldn't say, you know, don't even try breath meditation, but if you find that breath meditation just does become a chore, try something else. Try metta meditation. Identify your number one hindrance and apply a remedy for that. Yeah. But really, I mean, there's no one answer. It's up to you to experiment, I would say. Yeah. Diana. Hi.
Wonderful, Chanda. Hi. Hi, everyone. I came in late. I'm sorry. I don't know how far you got reading.
Not that far. Well, no, the end of the sutta, actually, but we'll do the next one, hopefully.
Okay. So I just have to say that I love this metaphor of my head on fire
Yeah.
because I think my head has been on fire lately.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a good reminder.
Right, right, right. I mean, it's true. Sometimes we feel our own heads are on fire, but remember the world is on fire, okay? This is the nature of samsara. This is what happens in samsara. And I'm really sorry that, you know, that you've been feeling that way. Yeah. But I think to try to extend it from one's own personal situation to a reminder that this is what samsara is like, and then to double down on our efforts. Because if we stay in our own suffering and double down on our efforts from there, there can be a kind of sense of desperation, and we can be coming at it through with too much a sense of despair in a way. And I think to just steady oneself, to get that universal sense of the suffering, to steady oneself, to say, okay, this is good, this is the first noble truth. You know, there's a path and there's something that can be done, but then to approach it gently as usual, right? It says extraordinary effort, zeal, desire, enthusiasm. That doesn't mean force. It can mean like renewed inspiration or a renewed sense of urgency, but more like consistent practice, knowing that it's the persistent, consistent, gentle approach that's going to work. So, yeah, to put drops in the jar, you know, consistently throughout your day, to be mindful as much as you can, because the mind will be swinging this way and that. And then, yeah, to just really embrace the practice. It's not that you now have to go and sit in a cave and meditate 18 hours a day.
I wish I could.
Yeah, I'm sure. But maybe you can do a little bit more. Just
Yeah.
do a lot of loving kindness. Yeah, a lot of loving kindness. Because we're making an effort to develop wholesome states, right? Yeah. So find what wholesome states will support you when things are difficult. Yeah. Tari. Hi.
Hi, thank you. I missed the beginning of the talk as well, but I think someone's very kindly posted a translation. I think I lean a lot more towards kind of I think the type of person who has more insight rather than some of the states in meditation.
Yeah.
And sort of like you said, kind of some of those reflections on like impermanence, suffering, and non-self tend to create more some of the states.
Yeah.
But that said, my meditation is often, it feels really fruitful and like a lot's happening and I have a lot of insight and I come out of it often in a much kind of, I guess, better state and a better way to kind of approach life. However, I don't necessarily feel much samatha in my meditation, and I've been meditating for, I don't know, like 8 years or so.
Yeah.
And I know more recently I was kind of trying to bring more samatha into it by kind of making my life a bit more simple. But my life is very, very, very busy, and
Yeah.
it's quite difficult to simplify it currently. And I'm doing my best, but there's just a lot that I can't quite simplify. So kind of in that context, I'm sort of struggling to bring more samatha in. So it's not necessarily that it's like a major problem, because my meditation still feels really like fruitful, and I'm trying to maybe introduce an evening practice, which is in progress. It's not so it's not very consistent, but the morning practice is consistent. And sometimes when my mind feels calm, my brain will interrupt it and go, aha, you're calm, and then like more thoughts will come in and start like messing it about. So there'll be a lot of like judgment. So I'm trying to like not judge the judgment, and sort of there's just a lot going on. But I think, I don't know, the things that bring me more to some of the state tend to sound like more vipassana things, but then they feel really fruitful, but then they're kind of engaging, and then it doesn't feel necessarily harming or freeing, I guess, in some ways, even though it does feel liberating, but not so still.
That's
I don't really
okay.
know
That's
what my question
okay.
is,
Yeah, no, that's absolutely great. I mean, it doesn't really matter. Like you did say several times that the insight and the kind of, contemplation of things like non-self does bring more calm. And that's enough, as long as you're gradually overcoming the hindrances. And it doesn't mean you can't measure that in single sittings. There might be sittings for even a whole month which are just all over the place. It doesn't matter. It's kind of the ongoing practice and the effect it's having on your life. And if it's bringing benefit, that's fantastic. The calm develops in the background by itself, and it is there. The only thing that blocks us from like deep meditation is the 5 hindrances. So most of our practice, if not all of it really, apart from maybe occasional, deep dives into states of calm, is working with understanding the 5 hindrances, how they arise, what are their remedies, what are their kind of opposites in a way, how to cultivate their opposites. I think if you've got a very busy life, it's actually good to do probably more insight practices and just learn to accept and have a really good relationship with the thinking mind, because that's part of working wisely with the hindrances. But you could also, I would say, focus on things that make you more happy, because the mind gets still through happiness. That's the proximate cause. And so if you have some time throughout the day, you can just practice metaphor towards yourself or towards a loved person. Just bring to mind wholesome states, states of loving kindness, thoughts of loving kindness. That can be really good. And even if you did want to kind of have another session where you do sort of have the intention, let's say, to cultivate calm, loving kindness again could be a really good way, because you're harnessing thinking. If you can't beat it, join it, kind of thing, right? You're not going to free the mind of thinking. So use thought to generate wholesome states, happy emotions, something that actually nourishes the mind, and then the mind will increasingly find its happiness inside. So I wouldn't think it's too much of a problem at all. I mean, in my life too, it's incredibly busy. It's literally 7 a.m. till 9, 10, 11, 12 at night. Not 9, actually, never. It's really busy. And sometimes I do sort of letting be meditation. So I'm not really focused on a particular object. Sometimes the breath comes to mind because I practice a lot with the breath. And I can get a sense of well-being, not necessarily really deep. But more often I'll be kind of practicing a light Vipassana type of method or metta meditation. And that keeps my mind kind of nourished. And then when I have longer to practice on retreat, which I hope you'll get someday, then I can allow the mind to settle and quieten and be more directed by its natural inclination to calm. So don't push your mind around. It already has a lot to do. But see if you can just encourage it to enjoy whatever piece is there. Yeah, value it. Never criticize it. So it's 22, but I would like to read the next one because it's very similar and it will recap for people who haven't heard the first. And it also tells us what we should do to further our practice in ways you may not expect. And actually in ways that you're doing. So that's really good. So here we go. This is number 94. So monastics or community, there are these 4 kinds of persons found existing in the world. What for? Here, some person gains internal serenity of mind, but not with the higher wisdom of insight into phenomena. So it's the same 4. So I won't repeat them. The other one is the higher mind without serenity. The other one is neither. And the last one is both. So then we go through the 4 again in more detail. Number 1. The person among these who gains internal serenity of mind, but not the higher wisdom of insight into phenomena, should approach one who gains the higher wisdom of insight into phenomena and inquire of them, how, friend, should conditioned phenomena be seen? How should conditioned phenomena be explored? How should conditioned phenomena be discerned by insight? The other then answers them as they have seen and understood the matter thus. Conditioned phenomena should be seen in such a way, explored in such a way, discerned by insight in such a way. And I already mentioned in the beginning that that is by way of impermanence, suffering, and non-self into our own direct experience, the 6 senses, or the 5 khandas. Then sometime later one gains both internal serenity of mind and the higher wisdom of insight into phenomena. So number 2, the person who gains the higher wisdom of insight into phenomena but not internal serenity of mind should approach one who gains internal serenity of mind and inquire of them, how, friend, should the mind be steadied? How should it be how should it be stilled? Let's not say concentrated. Actually, it's steadied. And then how should the mind be composed? How should it be unified? How should it be stilled? The other then answers as they have seen and understood the matter thus. The mind should be steadied in such a way, composed in such a way, unified in such a way, and stilled in such a way. Then sometime later one gains both higher wisdom of insight into phenomena and internal serenity of mind. The person who gains neither should approach one who gains both. So, and then the person will answer both ways. Okay, so you approach one who obtains both and ask, how should we do this? And then the last one, the person who gains both internal serenity of mind and the higher wisdom of insight into phenomena should base themselves on those same wholesome qualities and make a further effort for the destruction of the taints. These monastics or community are the 4 kinds of persons found existing in the world. So that's very nice. So we have to ask questions. Again, this points towards not thinking we know, understanding there may be others who've gone a bit deeper, or maybe in some areas they've gone deeper, or maybe they have different methods they could teach or different perspectives on the practice, and ask them, talk to them, ask them how to do these things, and then actually practice it in that way. You know, sometimes their advice might not work, but it's good to be open and humble enough to ask. And then I think the answer to Shirley's question really came to me with this, that the person who has had both, it doesn't say that they should approach someone and ask anymore. So I suspect that it's the person with both that is now a stream winner. Because we have to have right view and sama samadhi. Yeah? Samaditi, sama samadhi, right stillness, in order for stream winning to occur. Plus everything in between. The whole Eightfold Path has to be there. In order for stream winning to occur. So this person is now what we call a trainee. So we can talk about trainees at the monastery, or, you know, bhikkhunis fully ordained, but we're not even trainees until we're stream winners. We're just trying to learn to be trainees. So if you can't say you're a stream winner, you can still ask a lot of questions, and it's only really the stream winner that has their own kind of internal map, in a sense. They have enough samadhi, they have enough wisdom, in order to know the path. So they have no doubt about the path and they can proceed. But even then, you know, it's very nice for them if they can talk to other people who have also experienced the Dhamma. And I've seen some of my own teachers recently who listen to my Dhamma talks. They don't have much choice because we're teaching together, but they enjoy it because the Dhamma's the Dhamma. So even for, you know, people well on the path, they can still get inspired and uplifted and gladdened by hearing the Dhamma. And it's really hearing the teachings of the Buddha, isn't it? So, okay. So here the question, how should the mind be stilled by metta? How should it be settled by metta? Unified by metta, immersed by metta. Yeah, there's a question mark on the last one, but I would agree that that's possible. And again, it depends on each person. Some people might have a trouble or not have much of an inclination towards the practice of loving kindness. They might find it easier to get settled through breath meditation or through something else like kasina meditation, which is not that easy, by the way. Or maybe through insight, it's possible. Or maybe through, what else can you do? The other Brahma Viharas. It's possible to be unified, settled and stilled. Basically, every practice that leads towards samadhi has to go through the same stages, more or less, that are gone through in the Anapanasati Sutta. So even though you might be working with a different object, you need to come to the stage where piti arises, piti and sukha, the happiness and bliss, and then that settles down, and then the object becomes a kind of mental object. And then we become unified from there. So with metta practice, the thing is with metta is that the piti and sukha come up more quickly. So it's a very beautiful practice for people who don't necessarily get the piti, the happiness arising in their meditation very easily. Anapana tends to develop peace more quickly. Metta tends to develop joy. And from that joy, one becomes more still. So if you find that you're practicing breath meditation or any other meditation, there's a lack of joy, do lots of metta. That can help. And then you can even put that joy straight on the breath. So yeah, you can go all the way into jhana through metta meditation. Trainees in training. Yeah, trainees or people training to be trainees. Yeah. I can recommend a Metta Blast daily. Excellent. Where do you get your Metta Blast from, John? Would you like to share that? It'd be nice to hear some more voices other than my own. Would you like to share where your Metta Blast comes from? Is it from you? Someone else? You're only nodding. Can you unmute? Would you like to? Oh,
yes.
excellent.
Yes, I can. The Metta Blast was Venerable Canda and her this morning was a fantastic way to start the day.
Oh,
I missed Wednesday's metta chanting.
Yeah.
but I didn't miss it because I got it. I got it on YouTube, and
Excellent.
it was fantastic. So yeah,
Oh,
recommended.
oh, excellent. Which was that one? Last week's?
Yeah, it was. I think it was. It must have been this week actually, because it went
Yeah.
straight up. There's like a 10-minute. I thought that's great. I've only got like 10 minutes before I go out, but I'm going
Ah,
to I'm going to listen to that
okay. Maybe it's the chanting.
and participate as well.
Oh, great. Yeah.
But it was joyful. Thank you so much.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Yeah, I was from the start of the pandemic focusing on metta practice and also the metta chanting
Yes.
because obviously it's what we need to support us, and it's very connecting, isn't it? It's very connecting.
Yes,
It
certainly.
opens up the heart. And samatha is an emotional journey. Ajahn Brahm always says this, it's not an intellectual path, it's an emotional path. We have to get familiar with the blissful emotions as well as the difficult ones, right? It's not always like digging through the hard stuff. It's also learning to empathize and increase and rejoice in the beautiful. So, yeah, metta is very helpful for kind of, in a sense, almost bypassing the thinking mind. Yeah, the intellectual mind that gets stuck sometimes. Yeah, great. So, any last comments or questions on this before we end? How do you all practice? Any methods people enjoy? Another method for insight practice, actually, which can be helpful, but again, it leads also to samatha, is like 4-element meditation. That's a nice meditation. I'm doing a day retreat on that, I think, at some point. I forget when. It's only a day retreat because, we don't have enough people to organise proper full-length retreats yet. Or lots of people are saying they like our Ajahn Brahm and my metta practices and Ajahn Brahm and the kitten. It's really interesting what works for people because my dad actually can't stand the metta with the little kitten. I shouldn't say that, but it really irritates him. He's like, little kitten, little kitten. I don't like the little kitten. I told that to Ajahn Brahm once, and I think he felt a little bit like, oh, because then the next time my dad showed up I told him, Ajahn, that on one of the online retreats, my mum and dad were listening to the live streams, and I told Ajahn that my dad was listening, and so he said, oh, today we're going to practice metta. Let's not do the little kitten today. Let's do a different method. Which was so sweet because he doesn't go for that. So yeah, whatever works for you. Yeah, little kittens, little kangaroos, or maybe your best friend, maybe your Dhamma teacher. Sometimes it's so counterintuitive. I spoke to another really close friend who Diana knows, and we swapped notes on whether we get a lot of metta when we practice it towards our teachers. And I said, actually, when I practice to Ajahn Brahm, it's not the strongest, even though I would say that my metta for him is way off the charts in every way, actually. But to actually use him as a meta object is too complicated because I know him too well. So then it goes into more thinking. And my other friend said that it was the same for his teacher, that if he uses him, it's actually too complicated because he knows him so well. He's grown up with him. So yeah, it's easier for me with his teacher, Ujagara, by the way. Diana knows. Yeah, because maybe I just have more of a it's not like the detailed personal relationship. And I don't know if my friend sends it to Ajahn Brahm, but anyway, it's interesting. It's sometimes you have to experiment with different people and find what works. Hannah, do you want to share or say something?
Hello. I just wanted to say, actually, it's interesting in what you were saying, how you struggle with someone that close to you for metta, because you know them so well. So would you say that when you practice metta, you I don't know, you feel it more, so you don't go into so much depth with thinking about that
Right.
individual or that?
Yeah, good question. Just to clarify, it's not that I struggle to send it to Ajahn Brahm, it's just that it's not the strongest somehow, because I think it's probably harder to get a conceptual sense. just a simple image or a simple sense. I mean, sometimes I do feel a lot, but not as an object for samatha. I think that's the thing. Like, I go around with a lot of metta for Ajahn Brahm. Like, if he tells me about his meditation, I can sometimes just cry because I feel so much mudita and just, you know, just so much happiness and joy. And I'll basically do anything, you know, like to serve out of gratitude and all of that. But it's more like when we're practicing metta in a, say, an intensive retreat, and we're actually wanting to still the mind to the point of jhana, I think then it's easier to take someone who's more of just a sort of, I think that's why he starts with the kitten, that's almost like an imagination. There's more of a concept around it than a story, than a kind of reality to it, perhaps. Like you could just get a impression, like with this other teacher of mine, I just think of a time he looked at me with so much kindness, or like so much mudita, or just a particular special occasion. I can keep that. Whereas if it's someone I've had like years and years of conversations with, does that make sense?
It does. Thank you very much. Thank you.
But that might not always be the rule for everyone. And, you know, it works differently at different times as well. But one of the most successful people I use, or successful practices I developed, was with someone who wasn't a close friend, but had sponsored me to be on a retreat. And at that time, I just saw her face full of kindness, and I just felt so much gratitude that she became such an easy object to use. And that sustained the whole retreat because, yeah, there was some direct connection and direct feeling of genuine gratitude. It's something that brings a feeling, you know, into the heart. Yeah. So it's like when I teach metta, I often say, think of someone who brings a smile to your heart just by thinking of them, you know, and someone who you have an uncomplicated relationship with. Yeah. So that can lead to stillness. And metta leads to a lot of insight too, because you see how perception changes your reality. It actually changes the world you live in. It changes the way you view your past, the way you think about your future, the actions that you do then to create that future, etc. Everything's different seen through the eyes of love. So it's a wonderful practice, especially if you are busy and you have to meet lots of difficult people, then lots of metta practice. Because you receive the metta, even if you're not practicing it for yourself, the fact that you experience it is an emotional experience. You get that experience. It nourishes you. So, yeah. And it can be for yourself. All right. I think we've come to the end of the session. So I think Gunter's going to say a couple of words today. Joseph now has a halo, so that's wonderful. Obviously, you've become either enlightened or very close. He has a halo. All right, Gunter.
Yeah, thank you. As usual, Viola, I think I'm very grateful for your work and for especially today's quite interesting and deep thoughts. If someone feels like and is able to, please consider doing some donation, some dana. And you can easily do it on anukampaproject.org/donate. A one-off or a regular donation is always highly welcome. But there are other ways also where possibly gardening work, I don't know what, anything.
Probably.
Anything to contact team at anukampaproject.org with any suggestion or question. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Gunter. Yeah. So someone's asking about the 4 Elements meditation retreat. I think that's in April. We probably haven't got it up yet because it might not be out for registration. I think it's with London Insight, if I remember. I think it's in April, maybe the 11th or something. It's only a day. It's a bit frustrating because the day retreats take as much preparation as a week retreat, but we don't have a venue for a longer one. Yeah, what else do I need to share? Well, tomorrow there's no metta. well, there is metta online and there is metta in your heart, but there's no metta with me because on Sunday I'm teaching a day retreat on empathy and resilience. I've been trying to get my head around both, and goodness me, there's actually quite a lot. So that should be interesting. And then it will be Christmas, won't it? So we'll probably have the metta chanting, I guess. I'm not sure if that's happening New Year's Eve, Christmas Eve. Yeah, probably. And then we do have a sutta class the day after Christmas. Boxing Day. What did Matthews call it? The no year place or something, between the years. It's like that time when you don't know what's going on. Anyway, oh, and then there's a 2-day metta retreat actually in Sheffield, and if you can't come to that, you can join online, so that would be nice, on the 2nd and 3rd of January. I think that's a great way to start the new year, especially if you're not feeling very well, you're feeling depressed, you're feeling beaten up by life and sad and lonely, then please come. Even if you can't join for every session, that's fine by me. And that's you can register for that on the website. So yeah, thank you for being here, and we'll see you soon. Take care, everybody. Look after yourselves, and please practice lots of love and kindness. You can unmute if you wish, and we can wave goodbye.